Hey, Dale, did you see the notice about the meeting at lunch today?
Yeah, I saw that. Looks like it might be fun, but I kind of doubt we're going to learn anything.
Hey, guys, come here.
Did you see this?
Did you guys see the sign about this free lunch today? Anytime they give us something out for nothing, take it. They're going to give you hats and shirts, too. Let's go, huh? Come on.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Doing cameras?
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, sir.
All right.
Okay, everybody happy? Everybody full of barbecue? Okay, well, we're here today to get a lesson in communications from one of the world's great experts. We brought him here at a great deal of expense. Mike Wickett from Detroit, worldwide known as a communicator and a teacher and a trainer. Let's give him a big Southern welcome to Panama City. Mike Wickett.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm very excited to be here with you today to share some communication strategies that you can use to get better career results and better personal results. I'd like to ask you a couple of quick questions. How many of you here absolutely want to sharpen your communication skills? Could we see the hand? Okay. How many of you would be open to some new ideas?
Yes.
Okay. And how many of you like to have a little bit of fun? How many of you need to have some fun? The same group. Well, you know, studies tell us that the single most essential skill for business success in the 90s is the ability to communicate. Relationship studies tell us that relationships break down because couples fail to communicate. Communication skills are valuable in every area of life. And I want to tell you why I am so excited about these skills. I was a person who grew up with low self-esteem and very little confidence. And I had a negative attitude, and I was a very poor student. I mean, I was never considered to be very bright. As a matter of fact, I graduated in the half of the class that made the top half possible. And I was fired from a couple of jobs, and I had problems communicating and connecting with people. And then one day I got sick and tired of being poor and alone and having lousy relationships, and I decided to improve myself, and I enrolled in a communications course. It changed my life. By learning how to communicate, I was able to get a new job. I was able to get several promotions. I was able to increase my income. I was able to build more positive relationships and have a more enjoyable social life. So I am completely sold on the value of communication skills. And today I'd like to make a difference in your life. I'd like to use some of my background to contribute to your career here at the dealership and to your success away from work. Our objective here today is really to build a bond, to build a connection between parts and service, a communication connection. That's our objective. You know, if you think about it, communication's a little bit like playing table tennis. You know, if I decided I wanted to play table tennis, you know, I'd just get out and it didn't come back. Not much of a game. What's missing here?
No partner.
I don't have a partner. There's no give and take. There's no give and take. It's all one-sided. Now, effective communication needs to be give and take. Parts and service and parts and sales and service and sales and parts and customers and service and customers. Effective communication is both people being actively involved in communication. Now, the heart of communication skill is the art of asking questions. And after 15 years of learning and growth, I am convinced that the greatest skill of all is the art of asking open-ended questions. Now, closed-end questions cause people to respond yes or no, which doesn't give us much information. Open-ended questions cause people to talk to us, tell us what they're feeling, tell us what they want, tell us what they need. So today we're going to focus on open-ended questions as a way to get to know people, to build relationships, both at the dealership and in your personal life. So what I need a volunteer. Who will role play with me in the art of asking questions? Yes, young lady, what is your name?
Sherry.
Sherry, thank you. Sherry, I would really enjoy knowing you better. Could I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Sherry, where were you born?
Here in Florida.
Where'd you go to grade school?
Lucille Moore.
Where'd you go to high school?
Bay High.
Bay High.
Yeah.
Here in this area?
Yeah.
I can't believe it. My cousin John went to Bay High. Would you believe that I can remember going to a football game at Bay High about 10? Folks, I'd like you to notice what I did. I asked her a question. She started to respond, and what did I do?
Cut her off.
I cut her off and started talking about who?
Yourself.
I started talking about myself. Now, when I started talking about myself, I took all the focus off Sherry, didn't I? And who did I put the focus on?
You.
And when I did that, what did it do to our communication? It ruined the communication. It broke it. Do you realize that when we interrupt somebody, it is the equivalent of taking a knife and stabbing them, emotionally speaking? When I interrupt somebody like Sherry, we kill the communication. If we want to have more effective communication, the very first idea I want to share with you is do not do what?
Interrupt.
Don't interrupt. It kills the other person's energy. Now, when we say keep the focus on the other person, does that mean that we can't talk? Well, let's see. We'll try it again. Sherry, would you role play with me?
Sure.
Sherry, where were you born?
Here in Florida.
Where'd you go to grade school?
Lucille Moore.
Where'd you go to high school?
Bay High.
Did you participate in any sports at Bay High?
Not really.
Were you involved in any extracurricular activities?
Like a math club.
What'd you do in the math club?
Just different quizzes.
You did different quizzes in the math club.
Mhm.
How did you do at math?
I was pretty good.
Well, excellent. Now, I want you to notice, I talked, didn't I? Did I take the focus off her, everybody?
No.
No, even though I talked, I kept the focus totally on Sherry by asking her questions that showed that I was really with her. So our very first idea today is when we communicate and when we ask questions, if you and I interrupt, we kill the other person's energy. I was doing a seminar in California a couple of years ago, and a very wealthy, powerful businesswoman in this exercise raised her hand and said that in all the years of going to seminars, this was the most powerful idea she had ever gotten, because she had erroneously thought that in communication, if she jumped in enthusiastically, she was being a good communicator. She never realized that by interrupting, you kill the person's energy. So if you really want to communicate effectively, and I know that you do, when someone is talking to us, keep the focus where, everybody? Keep the focus on them, and when they're done, you can then talk about yourself. Our very first idea is keeping the focus on the other person and keeping the energy going. Secondly, is the art of asking core value questions to build relationships. I'd like you to imagine you were standing on a dock, and about 1,000 yards out into the water was an island. And you were looking out at the island wondering what it was, and all of a sudden a bottle washed up shore. And you picked up the bottle, and it had a note in it. Well, of course, being curious, you had to look at the note, so you tore the paper out. And the note said, every treasure you ever hoped for is offshore on the island that you see. How many of you, if you were looking at Treasure Island, how many of you want to get there and get the treasure? Yes. Now, suppose you didn't know it, but it was filled with great white sharks. Let me ask the parts people. Suppose the service people were going to swim and you knew it was filled with great white sharks. How many of you wouldn't tell them? Okay, let me ask the service people. How many of you wouldn't tell parts? I think we want to communicate a little more effectively here. Now, let's suppose for a minute that at the dock there was a ship. And all you had to do was parts and service together, because the ship only made one trip, and you both had to go or no treasure. Suppose parts and service together could just get on the ship, a short ride over to the island, get all the treasure in the world. How many of you'd all get on the ship?
Yes.
The ship we're talking about is called the USS Communication. See, parts and service, if you're going to get the treasure of life, if you're going to get the good things, you got to be on the same ship. You got to be on the same island together. And the way that you do that is through the art of asking open-ended, core value questions. The way that you build relationships with retail customers, wholesale customers, friends away from work, is the art of asking questions, getting people to open up and talk about what they value, what they stand for, what they're passionate about, what's important to them. Because when you find out what people want, what they need, it's easy to support them in getting what they want. A few years ago, I was doing a Saturday communications seminar for a light truck division in Michigan, and there were 34 people involved in that session. They were managers and supervisors. And what we did was we had them pair off in twos, and we had them ask open-ended questions to try and find out more about each other, like what were they about away from work, what were their goals and dreams. And so they took a couple of minutes. I said, who found out some interesting things? And a bunch of them raised their hand. I said, who'd like to share? Guy in the back of the room was partnered with the boss of the department. And he raised his hand and he said, I found out an amazing thing. I said, what's that? He said, I just found out that he, the boss, that the most important value in his life was his relationship with his two sons. And he said, I found out that every Saturday, the time spent with his two sons was the most important thing in his life, and he wouldn't let anything else get in the way. And I said, well, obviously you didn't know that before. And he said, no. And I said, I'm kind of curious. How long have you worked with him? He looked down at the floor sheepishly and said, 15 years. Now here's a man who worked for a guy for 15 years and didn't know what his single most important value was in life. Is that a criticism? Absolutely not. Everybody does the best they can with the skills they have or don't have, but what I'm saying is, he never built a relationship with this man because he never got beneath the surface to ask open-ended questions to find out what he was about. I asked the remaining 32 people in the room, how many of you knew that his number one value was his relationship with his two sons? Nobody raised their hand. 33 people worked with and for this man for 15 years, and they did not know that his number one value was his relationship with his boys. So let's remember the example of that light truck division. Let's remember that the way that we build relationships is ask what, everybody?
Questions.
Ask open-ended questions to get people to talk about themselves. Now, how many of you here are 93%ers? I see some questioning looks. It's not a trick. Let me tell you what I mean by 93%. Communication studies tell us that communication breaks down this way. Communication is only 7% verbal. It's only 7% words. 93% of all communication is nonverbal. It's body language, it's tone of voice, and it's attitude. We really don't communicate with words. Mostly we communicate with our non-verbal posture, which brings us to listening. How many of you have ever had the experience of talking to somebody who was not listening to you? In clean language, give me some feedback. How did you feel when you were talking and nobody was listening? How'd you feel? Ignored? Unimportant? Insulted? Angry? Dumb?
Insignificant.
Stupid, insignificant. I mean, nothing good comes out of not listening. Now, let me ask you, how many of you, like me, have ever been a poor listener? And how do you suppose the other person felt? Just the way you just described. When we don't listen to people, they feel insignificant, they feel unimportant, they feel dumb, they feel offended. So if we're going to communicate, a significant part of communication is being a good what, everybody? Listener. I'd like to do a little demonstration on listening skill, and I need a volunteer. Who would volunteer with me? Young lady, come up here, please, and thank you. Let's give her some appreciation for volunteering. Fantastic. Just right there. What is your name?
My name is Sharon.
Sharon, what I'd like you to do is I want you to think of something in your life that you're excited about, in your present or in your future. In just a second, I'm going to ask Sharon to take about 50 or 60 seconds, tell me something she's excited about, and I'm just going to listen, and we're going to have your fellow associates here just observe my listening. Could we do that, please?
Sure.
Would you turn this way? Sharon, what's one thing you're excited about? You just observed me. What are you excited about?
One of the biggest things I'm excited about right now is that my children and I have just sold the house that we're living in and
Yes.
have bought a new home.
Yes.
We have been in the process of getting prices on doing some remodeling with the home and fixing it the way we want it to be.
Wonderful.
I have a daughter
Wonderful.
that is 13. She's a Quest student. And then I have a son, Caleb. He's 6. He is an honor roll student. He's a great kid. They both are. I enjoy them a lot, and we have a lot of fun together.
Yes, very exciting.
We enjoy the beaches here.
Don't stop. Your enthusiasm went down. What happened to her enthusiasm?
You turned her off.
What do you mean I turned her off? Why would you say that?
Yeah, you ignored her. You were listening.
Why would you say I would ignore? I heard every word she said. How many? Was I listening, everybody? No. Why would you say that? Because of my what? Oh, my body language. Like, what's one thing I did that said I wasn't listening? One person at a time. What?
Looked at your watch.
When I looked at my watch, what did that say to her? Could you hurry up? This isn't very interesting. What else did you notice? When I closed my arms, what does that say to her silently?
Shut her off.
I'm shutting off from her. I'm closing off. What else did I do?
Move back.
I moved back. What does that say to her? I'm trying to get away from her rather than closer. What else did I do?
Side.
I took a deep sigh, which said what? I'm bored. Did I do anything else? Fooling with my hairpiece. How many of you couldn't tell? Because it's a good one. Now, when I was fooling with my hairpiece, what did that say to her? My mind was somewhere else. So even though I heard what Sharon was saying, my body language told her what? That I wasn't listening. Let's give her some appreciation. Thank you. And I apologize for being such a lousy listener. So, yes, don't let it happen again. Thank you so much. So, do you see how body language and posture literally makes up 93% of all communication? So if we want to be more effective communicators, let's practice open, warm body language. For example, instead of closing our arms and being closed, we could have open posture, like with our arms open like this. We could lean toward the person a little bit. If we want to have warm body language, what could we have on our face, everybody?
Smile.
Now, it has to be an appropriate smile. For example, if you say to somebody, you know, a retail or wholesale customer goes in, you say, how you doing? And they say, I'm doing terrible. My wife's got cancer and chemotherapy, and she's sick every day, and it's awful. And you say, yeah. You got to pay attention and make sure that it is an appropriate smile. Let me just tell you one thing about smiling and warm body language. Retail studies tell us that when customer contact people smile, customers buy 38% more product. So by practicing warm, open, friendly body language, you dramatically enhance communication and you build business. Let's think about open-ended questions in building relationships. Here's a thought. You know, sometimes little things can make a big difference in a dealership. Is that true? Yeah. The little things? One suggestion is that when the service people go to the parts window for a part. Do you realize you can dramatically improve communication if you just write down the option code and go prepared? It makes it a lot easier for the service people to help you and for you to help them in just that one little thing. You see, it's the willingness to communicate more effectively that is the starting point of better communication. If you want to improve communication with somebody, you could say to them, what could I do to improve our communications? What could my department do to improve teamwork at this dealership? If you've got a conflict with somebody at work or away from work, how do you solve conflict? Not by giving advice. People don't want advice. Socrates gave advice. They poisoned him. The way to resolve conflict is by asking questions like, what do you need and how can I help? What could I do to support you? How could we serve you so that you could do a better job? How do you build relationships with retail and wholesale customers? You ask questions like, how are we doing in our service of you? And listen. You ask questions like, what could we do to improve our service? If you go to a party or a social event and you want to make friends, the best way in the world to do that is to ask about the other person. Now, everybody always talks about work when they meet. And if you want to be a unique communicator, don't talk about work. Say, what do you love to do when you aren't working? What's your greatest passion? What's your biggest dream? What's your biggest goal? They tell you, then you've got a bond where you can support them in something that's important to them. And that's how you can use open-ended questions to build powerful, effective relationships. Open-ended questions make an enormous difference. Then we come to the power of attitude. How many of you have ever gone into a store wanting to buy something and been greeted by a person who looked constipated? You know, they had a frown on their face and they said, well, how you doing? Thanks for coming in the store. My name is John. Here's my card. If I can help you, I'm over there. How many of you like to do business with happy, upbeat people? Yes. Business studies tell us that business goes where it's wanted, it stays where it's appreciated. So attitude is a tremendous factor in the art of communication. Now let me ask you, how many of you would like to have more positive, loving, upbeat communications? Could we see the hands? How many of you would like to have people treat you in a more positive manner away from work? Could we see the hands? Then just remember that people are just they're just a mirror reflection of the attitude that we send out. So if you want to have more positive energy coming back to you, you've got to send it out first. Communication is 93% nonverbal. And a very significant part of that is a person's attitude. See, attitudes are like some diseases. They're terribly contagious. Is yours worth catching? Say yes. Yes. Terrific. Because every day of our life, customers and family members are catching the spirit of our attitude. Let's imagine for a minute that I took these two sponges and put these two sponges into a pitcher of water. Let me ask you, what would the sponges do to the water?
Soak it up.
Soak it right up. Now, if you think about it, when people are around us, they're a lot like sponges. And they're always soaking up our attitude. Thank you. And so if we want to have positive results in our communication, we've got to have positive attitudes. One of the great discoveries of my life. Now, I have only been learning and growing and developing myself for 15 years, and that's really not a long time. And there's a great deal that I don't know. However, with 15 years of training in books and seminars, I've learned a few things. And I want to share with you one of the most powerful things I've ever learned, and that is this. The master key to every single day, to our relationships, to our career results, to the outcomes that we get, I'm convinced the master key to every single day is your attitude in the morning before you leave the house. And the way you start the day has a profound effect on the way that the day goes. How many of you ever had a day when you got up and felt terrific? How'd the day go? How many of you ever had a day when you got up and felt lousy? How'd the day go? Isn't it interesting that life tends to be our mirror? It tends to be a perfect mirror reflection of our attitude. So Wouldn't it be more effective if we could find a way to get up every day and be more positive? Would it impact on our communications? I'd like to suggest that one of the most powerful things we can do every day is to start the day with a positive viewpoint. Viewpoints are very impactful. You see, some people get up in the morning and say, "Good morning, God," and others say, "Good God, it's morning." Thank you. And your attitude influences the results you get during the day. Ladies and gentlemen, in the words of the immortal philosopher, Flip Wilson, what you see is what you get. Now remember that, because that is exactly the way life works. The way you see your communication determines the communication that you get. So here's what I suggest. Look on the positives every single day of your life. How do you do that? You look at what is right about your dealership. Service looks at what's positive about parts. Parts looks at what's positive about service. You both look at what's positive about sales and accounting and the managers and even the owner. You look for every positive thing that you can. You look at the positives in your family, with your spouses, with your kids. Because what you see is, by focusing on the positives, what will happen to your communication? You will communicate more effectively than ever before. One of the great experiences of my life was speaking in the prison a few years ago to talk about self-esteem values, to give prisoners some ideas on how they could feel like a winner, how they could feel like they had worth, and how they could feel like they could have some kind of hope for their future life. And it was an incredible experience. It was one of the most moving experiences of my whole life. And as I was driving away from the prison with a heart filled with gratitude and joy for what I had just experienced, I thought of the old adage that said, two men looked out from behind prison bars. One saw the mud, but the other saw the stars. My beautiful friend, you always have a choice. You can see the mud. You can see what's wrong with people, with situations. And if you see the mud, you get muddy communications, don't you? Or you could see the stars. You can look at the bright side. You can look for the positives. And if you will, it will dramatically improve all of your communications. What have we said here today? We've said that the greatest skill of all for building your business, your career, for dealership profitability, for harmony, for customer service, for happy, loving marriages, for wonderful relationships with children, is the ability to communicate. Everything you and I want in life comes from our ability to ask questions, to listen effectively, to have warm, open body language, and to be positively focused. I came here today to support you in using some of these tools so that you could get more of the good things you want from life. So if we want to communicate more effectively, we want to get aboard the what, everybody? And how do we get on Treasure Island? Through the art of asking questions. When we're asking questions, if we interrupt, what does it do to the person's energy? It kills it. It absolutely destroys the communication. If we want to build relationships, if we want to get to know each other better, unlike the people in that light truck division, we will get beneath the surface and we'll begin to find out more about each other by asking, what do you love to do when you aren't working? What's your biggest goal? What's your number one value? And then finding a way to support each other in the things that are important to each of us, and you can build a whole new level of relationships. Most of us want people to be loving and kind to us, and they want people to be positive to us. We have to remember that people are just our what? Mirror. And all they ever do is mirror back to us the attitudes we send out. So if we're more positive, people will soak up and absorb that positive energy, and we'll get better results than we ever got before. How many of you got any valuable ideas today for communicating more effectively? Do you realize the possibilities for this dealership if everybody is willing to communicate a little bit better? Do you realize the payoffs for you? You guarantee your future when you're a good communicator. Do you realize what can happen in your families, with your spouses and your kids and your significant others, if you're willing to listen and really focus on them and ask questions so that you can support them? you get a much better quality of life. Communication, the greatest skill of all. Questions, listening, positive attitude. You can get on that treasure island. You can get more of the good things you want from life, and that's why I'm excited to be here with you today. I support all of you in using these tools to sow the seeds of more effective communication in your dealership and in your personal life. And if you will reap a wonderful harvest of success and happiness beyond anything you've ever known before. How many of you are motivated to be a better communicator? Have a great day. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure. I really appreciate it. Thank you.